All right. In this video, I want to talk about utopia and sinlessness. You see, you can talk to Christians and ask them if they think that a utopia can be formed in this world. And they'll say no. It just can't happen, Too many people disagreeing, our sinful nature, selfish, right? It just can't come together. It can't work, right? And I was like, yeah, I agree. It's like, well, then how come a lot of you Christians think that uh, you have to be sinless and can be sinless in this world? And I just want you to think about that because society represents mankind as a whole, right? And if it cannot happen as a whole, then it can't happen on an individual level. Because if it could happen on an individual level, then it can happen as a whole, right? So you can't believe one without the other, right? And I'll bring up something like Romans 8, talking about how the carnal mind cannot be subject to the law of God because it's at enmity with God, right? And that's your flesh, which you have, you're in the flesh. And then they'll say, yeah, you gotta be in the spirit and not in the flesh, though. It's like, okay, well, what does that mean? And a lot of times, what they'll end up coming up with is that it means that you gotta have faith that you can overcome, and that with God you can do anything. It's like, okay, then why haven't you done it? And then all of a sudden, crickets. Just crickets, right? So it's a bit strange, right? Bit strange where they believe this thing that has never happened. They can't point to anybody who's done it. They think they can do it, but they've never done it. And they don't see how it's the same thing with all mankind trying to create a utopia and failing every time. Every time. And that's the same thing with man trying to become sinless. It's not going to happen. And they'll talk about, oh, you just don't have faith in the power of God. And it's like, you don't. Why aren't you perfect? Right? And it's not that I actually don't have faith that God could do it. I know God could actually make us sinless. He can, right? The problem is not God. The problem is not even our faith in God doing it. The problem is we are selfish and we want to sin, especially when it benefits us, right? There's times where you just sit and you have some thoughts you shouldn't be thinking about, and instead of just blocking it out and thinking about something else, you dwell on it and you fantasize about it, whether it's something sexual or something that gratifies the ego, lust of power, and you just focus on it, or maybe it's revenge. You have a lot of revenge fantasies, right? And then those kind of seeds of the things you think about come out through your words, and then you end up sinning with your words. Maybe you said a distasteful joke trying to make somebody laugh, but then you know you really offended somebody else, and you knew you shouldn't have said it. Little things like that, and not to mention your deeds, right? We do it because we want to, and if you're being honest, you'll admit that there's times where you want to sin. There's things you obviously don't want to do. Like, I don't want to kill people. I don't want to molest children. I don't want to rape people. I don't want to cheat around on my spouse, right? There's like, I don't want to sin. What are you talking about? And then there's like, there's other times where you do, like overeating, taking the last piece of something, like let's say a pie that somebody else didn't get a slice, but you wanted an extra one. There's times where you want to do something selfish and inconsiderate, and you actually take pleasure in doing it if you're being honest with yourself, right? So it's not about God not having the power. It's not about Satan being stronger. It's not about you lacking faith. It's about you just giving into the flesh, like Paul talks about in Romans chapter 7, about how there's times where the flesh keeps him from doing the good that he wants to do, right? Like maybe there's a time you should have been preaching to somebody, you got convicted to, but you're like, oh, I don't feel comfortable doing it. So you didn't. Your flesh kept you from doing it. You chose not to because it was a selfish thing for you to do. You didn't want to come out of your comfort zone, right? And then there's the uh, times where there's something evil that you know you shouldn't do, but your flesh gets you to do it. Well, I stole the cupcake from the room. It wasn't mine, and it was the last one, but I really wanted it. Something as simple as that, right? I'm just trying to make things simple and lighthearted for this video. But your flesh got you to do what you didn't really want to do, right? And you enjoyed it, but then you feel guilty about it afterwards, right? But your flesh got you to do it. And he says, it's not me that's doing it. It's my flesh, the sin that dwells within me, right? And then he says, but hey, there's no condemnation to those who don't walk in the flesh, but in the spirit. And then these people, they jump from saying, oh, that means walk by the faith that you can overcome. And it's like, no, Paul didn't give you any kind of an example of actually doing that. He actually gave you an example of not being able to do that. What he's saying is, when you walk by the flesh, you walk by sight. And when you do that, you judge yourself. Like you're like, hey, I don't know if I'm saved because I didn't actually preach to that guy and I was convicted to and I didn't do it. And you feel bad about it. And you're like, yeah, I did do that selfish thing and I took that last piece of pizza at the party and there was a guys there that I knew that he didn't get a piece, but I did it anyway and nobody knows. I feel bad about it, right? Keeping things somewhat lighthearted here. And you condemn yourself, right? And what he says about, hey, but there's no condemnation when you walk into the Spirit, he's saying to walk by faith, not by sight. Because Jesus died for you, past, present, and future, the good and the bad. Your whole life is nailed to that cross. So you got to let that go and not condemn yourself because you're going to sit into that and it's going to dwell and it's going to become worse. Sin upon sin. You need to walk away from it and have faith that God still loves you in spite of that. He died for you. And for people who've done much worse, so move on, move forward, because in reality, we've all killed Jesus. We've beaten, humiliated, and nailed the perfect, innocent Son of God to a cross, and He's willing to forgive us. So get up and keep walking, right? Don't condemn yourself, and that also means don't be condemning others. Yeah, they're struggling with sin, and just walk it off, right? Encourage them to do something else. Work with them. Love them. Don't condemn them, right? So, I just want to make this video showing how that's a bit of a hypocrisy here. Hopefully it gets through to somebody. Thanks for watching and take care.